Welcome to another episode of Broadcast My Talent. I'm Tony Aroya, and today we're down at the Jacob Javits Center in New York City for the Comic Convention. We come to these, 2-3 times a year, and the hope is to bring you some of the biggest names in science fiction and the comic book industry. We thank you for being with us. We hope we can bring you some good fun. I'm standing here with Mr. Stephen Niles, and he's the creator of 30 Days of Nights. And if you've never been under a chair in a movie theater before, go see that movie because it was really good. Mr. Niles, thank you for a few minutes of your time. And what started the premise of the book in your head? And I loved it because we've seen the old vampire movies 1,000 times. They've been afraid of running water, you can't see the reflection in the mirror and all that stuff. And you took it, it's really cool, 30 days without the sun. What brought about that?
You know, it was a really simple I was living in Minnesota during one of their 6-month winters, and I saw a little article in a paper about a town in Alaska called Barrow. And what made it so, it said, and they went dark for, months at a time. And I pulled out the thing and went, vampires. That's it. I was like, this would be a vacation spot for vampires, And so I lugged that around for a few years. And at the time, it took a few years for like all the Buffy stuff and Blade and all this. I'd had it. I was like, cheerleaders are dating them, and now every vampire knows martial arts. And what the hell happened to my scary vampires?
They all move at the speed of light, and
and they're seducing. It's just like they humanize them basically. And I love Anne Rice and what she did, because at that time that was very revolutionary. But now it's just like, how is it every time you become a vampire you automatically know martial arts?
Some staples that are always going to be the same. What I did notice was, and I took my children to see this movie, and their mother thought I was crazy, but the week of Halloween, you couldn't have a better time. And there's a scene in the movie where one of them is chasing an SUV, and he outruns the SUV, and he's pounding on the top of the SUV, and he's trying to rip it off. One of the best horror movie scenes I've ever seen. I've seen a lot of horror movies. My kids were under the chair, or at the very least climbing on top of me. How much of the movie stayed in conjunction with the book, and how much...
I wrote the screenplay, the first rest of the screenplay. The scene you just mentioned, I wrote. Actually, that was one of my scenes that stayed in, so thank you for bringing that up. But they were really good to me. I wrote the first couple drafts, and then I worked really closely with the next two writers. And then once David Slade came on to direct, he was a fan of mine and Ben's and of the comic, so I was in contact all through production, all the way up to, I was writing right up to almost the release date because we were writing those subtitles. Nobody knew about the subtitles. So I remember a couple weeks before the movie opening, we were trying to figure out the dialogue for that cell scene, that whole the things they believe, figuring out how to make that line right, So I honestly, I expected the worst, and they treated me fantastic,
There was so many different takes on it. I like the whole idea that they had a sub-language. And subtitles at the bottom, and basically savage, a grunt or a growl or whatever. Did it open and close with that movie, or do you want to branch it out into something else?
I want to branch it out, definitely. I mean, I've already written Dark Days. There's 7 graphic novels. But there's the first 3 books called 30 Days a Night, and then Dark Days, and then Return to Barrow. Those are the ones I'd like to do. In Dark Days, you'll appreciate this because if you notice, there was a lot of intensity in Melissa George's eyes at the end of the movie. What she does in Dark Days is she writes a book about what happened and starts touring in LA. She's trying to draw the vampires out by exposing them, and then she's going to kill them. So it turns into, because she wants to show the world they exist, because that's their biggest power. And that's what they said. As long as nobody knows we exist, it's our greatest strength.
Well, oddly, there's actually a town in the top of the world, just a little bit off from the North Pole. And they just got sunlight for the first time. It was a big thing on the internet and on the news. They just got sunlight for the first time after 6 months. It's somewhere at the top of the world. It's absolutely...
Finland, and I can't believe somebody wasn't sitting there in Finland in the dark and didn't go, man, it would suck if vampires came along. You know, I can't. You know, it's some kid in Minnesota comes up with it. You know. Yeah.
What got you inspired to become an artist? I know you probably get that question 50 times a day, but
Guys like Richard Matheson and George Romero. George Romero's my hero in that. Well, one, Night of the Living Dead, the original Night of the Living Dead. He didn't do it in Hollywood. He made it in Pittsburgh, and he got his friends together. He raised the money, he did it himself, and wound up making a horror classic. And he's my hero, you know, for that. And he made, between Richard Matheson, who wrote I Am Legend, which was the first novel I ever wrote, and I also did a comic of it years ago that's accurate to the novel. And those guys, between those two guys, that they have just like formed my whole life. I've been reading them since I was a kid, and I've just always been a horror fan. Like Matheson he wrote Night Stalker, he wrote the Twilight Zone episode with Shatner with the man on the wing. I just love him, you know.
You said, now correct me if I'm wrong, you said you wrote I Am Legend.
I wrote a comic
Of I Am Legend. Richard Matheson sold me the rights when I was 19 years old. He sold me the rights for $100, and I did a comic book of it that IDW still puts out. So you can get an adaptation of the book, because none of the movies have done it. It's 3 movies, and none of them have done the book yet. So.
What do you have new that everybody should look for? Because I love your stories, I love your writing style, and you bring a lot of joy to still reading comic books. In an age of the internet, video games, you can get overwhelmed. Just people seem to be reading less and less. But I just wanted to thank you for bringing, a lot of joy and excitement back to it. What do you have next coming up that we should look for?
I'm having a lot of fun now. I got a 12-issue Batman series that I'm doing with Kelly Jones called Gotham After Midnight. And I think that tells you sort of the vibe. And I have an ongoing series called Simon Dark, which is my creator-owned character who lives in Gotham City. So DC's been doing wonderful things for me. And then at Dark Horse, I have my series Criminal Macabre, which I write novels and comics and all that stuff that we just got the novels out. And I'm going to just keep doing that, and lots of stuff for IDW. I got a new Bernie Wrightson book coming out, and then new movie. I'm just going to keep trying to do everything until my head explodes,
Mr. Niles, I want to take up any more of your time. You were a great interview. Thanks a lot for your time. I really appreciated the movie, and I'm looking forward to the rest of them.
I'd love it if anything you do with this. I'd love to send it to me, and will it be online?
Sorry?
Will this be online when you?
We'll send you the link and everything. I'll write it down for you before we leave.
There you go. There's my direct email. Just send me my email.
Thank you, Mr. Niles.
put on all my websites and stuff.
I look forward to it. I will.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your time.
Great interview.
Thank you. Tony Aroya, Broadcast My Talent.
Hi, this is Corinne. You're watching BMT.